The moment that joke slipped out of my mouth, the air changed, as if the room itself had taken a sharp breath and decided to listen more carefully. What was meant to be light, harmless, almost forgettable suddenly carried weight, history, fear, and hope all at once. I remember the way the evening light spilled across the floor, the faint hum of life outside the window, and the realization that sometimes the smallest words open the biggest doors. That was the moment I understood that some jokes are actually confessions wearing a disguise. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet, unexpected connections that change lives, take a moment right now to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the Kindness Chronicles, where stories like this remind us that love doesn't always arrive on time, but it always arrives with purpose. I had known her for years before that moment, long before I ever dared to imagine her as someone who might look at me differently. Our lives had intersected in the most ordinary way, through routine and familiarity, the kind that slowly weaves people into your days until you can't remember what life felt like before they were there. She was older than me by enough years that people noticed, by enough years that assumptions came packaged with every glance. She carried herself with a quiet strength that came from surviving things she never talked about in detail, the kind of strength that doesn't announce itself but shows up in how someone listens, how they pause before reacting, how they carry both warmth and caution in the same breath. I was younger, still trying to prove myself to the world, still making jokes to cover uncertainty, still believing that life had a clear timeline if you worked hard enough. Our connection grew slowly, like something fragile that didn't want to be rushed. We talked about work, about small frustrations, about dreams that felt too big to say out loud. I noticed how she always remembered details about people, how she offered kindness without expecting it back, how her laughter carried both lightness and a hint of sadness, as if joy had learned to coexist with loss inside her. I also noticed how she never spoke about love as something simple. There was always an undertone of experience in her words, a sense that she had once believed deeply and paid dearly for it. I told myself I was just observant, that admiration didn't mean desire, that comfort didn't mean longing. But feelings have a way of growing quietly when you aren't watching them. They settle into routines, hide behind jokes, and show themselves in the smallest moments, like the way my day felt incomplete if I hadn't seen her smile, or how my chest tightened when she looked tired, carrying burdens she refused to share. I began to realize that my jokes about asking her out were not jokes at all. They were rehearsals for courage I didn't yet have. The world, of course, had opinions ready. People always do when something doesn't fit neatly into their expectations. I heard comments wrapped in humor and curiosity, questions that pretended to be innocent but carried judgment underneath. Some implied that I was confused, others suggested she was lonely, as if love must always be explained away by weakness. Even before anything real had happened, the imagined criticism felt heavy. I wondered if I was being foolish, if I was mistaking gratitude for affection, if I was about to embarrass myself by wanting something that didn't belong to me. She, on the other hand, remained steady, kind, and carefully distant whenever the conversation drifted too close to anything personal. There were moments when I thought I saw something more in her eyes, a softness that lingered a second too long, a hesitation before she turned away. But I told myself not to read into it. Age wasn't just a number in our case, it was a wall built by experience, expectations, and fear. I assumed she saw me as a chapter already passed, not a story still being written. The day the joke slipped out was unremarkable in every other way. We were talking casually, the kind of conversation that feels safe because it has no destination. I laughed, said something about maybe asking her out someday when I was braver or older or wiser. I expected her to laugh it off, to redirect the conversation, to pretend it hadn't landed. Instead, she grew quiet in a way that felt deliberate. Her gaze held mine, not challenging, not amused, just honest. Then she asked, calmly and carefully, whether it didn't bother me that she was older. That question carried years inside it. It wasn't about age alone, it was about fear, regret, judgment, and the exhaustion of explaining oneself to a world that loves categories more than people. In that moment, I realized how often she must have dismissed possibilities before they could hurt her, how many times she must have chosen safety over hope. My heart pounded, not with excitement, but with the weight of understanding what it meant for her to even ask. I didn't answer right away. I thought about all the things that could go wrong, about how people might look at us, about how easy it would be to walk away and keep things simple. I also thought about how rare it is to meet someone who feels like home without trying. I thought about the way she made the world quieter just by being present. And I realized that fear had already taken enough from both of us. What followed was not a dramatic confession or an instant romance. It was something slower, more fragile, and far more real. We began to talk honestly, not in declarations, but in careful truths. We acknowledged the differences, the uncertainties, the possibility of pain. She shared pieces of her past, of love that had once felt forever and ended in lessons she never wanted to repeat. I shared my insecurities, my fear of not being enough, of being dismissed as immature or temporary. There were moments of hesitation, steps forward followed by steps back, days when doubt spoke louder than hope. The world didn't suddenly become kind. There were raised eyebrows, awkward silences, and unsolicited advice. Some people questioned my intentions, others questioned her judgment. Even when no one said anything out loud, we felt the pressure of being watched, measured against expectations that had nothing to do with who we were together. There were nights when she pulled away emotionally, afraid of leaning too hard on something that might not last. There were days when I questioned whether love alone was enough to bridge years of different experiences. But something kept pulling us back, something quiet and persistent. We learned to listen more than we spoke, to respect each other's fears without letting them rule us. I learned that loving someone older meant understanding that their heart carried scars I couldn't see, that reassurance had to be shown through consistency, not promises. She learned that loving someone younger didn't mean settling or starting over, but continuing a story with new perspective. Slowly, trust grew where doubt had lived. The turning point didn't come with a grand gesture. It came on an ordinary evening, when life felt heavy and neither of us had the energy to pretend we were stronger than we were. She admitted she was tired of being careful all the time, tired of assuming the worst to protect herself. I admitted I was tired of joking about feelings I meant seriously. In that shared vulnerability, something shifted. The fear didn't disappear, but it lost its power. As time passed, our bond deepened in ways that surprised even us. We built routines, shared silences, learned each other's rhythms. I found myself growing in ways I hadn't expected, becoming more patient, more present, more aware of what truly mattered. She allowed herself to hope again, not recklessly, but with a quiet bravery that moved me more than any dramatic declaration could. Love, I learned, is not about matching timelines, but about choosing each other daily, despite uncertainty. There were still challenges. Age differences don't vanish just because feelings are strong. There were moments when our perspectives clashed, when life stages felt misaligned, when the future looked unclear. But instead of letting those differences divide us, we learned to let them teach us. We stopped trying to fit into anyone else's idea of what we should be and focused on what felt true to us. Looking back now, I realize that the joke I made that day was never really a joke. It was a crack in the wall I'd built around my heart, an invitation I didn't know I was brave enough to offer. Her question wasn't a rejection, it was a test of sincerity, a moment of courage on her part too. We both stood at the edge of something uncertain and chose to step forward anyway. If this story has stirred something in you, if it reminded you of a love you were afraid to pursue or a chance you almost didn't take, please take a moment near the end of this video to like it, share it, and subscribe to the Kindness Chronicles. Your support helps these stories reach hearts that need them. Before this story ends, I have a special request. Please comment below and tell us what line or moment touched you the most, or share your own story of loving beyond fear, beyond age, beyond expectations. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Because sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is stop laughing off what matters and start listening to what our hearts have been trying to say all along.